I think you disagree with me on this. I think this league will be the league.
No way.
I think it will.
Not even close.
Because over the years, Serie A, when they had the money, they took all the players.
No, listen.
And the Premier League, they took all the players.
Mm.
And now Saudi Arabia have got all the money. And this is it, unlimited wealth. Unlimited wealth. But they can't spend enough. So much so that they're going to spend this money on Mbappe. So, that, as I said a month ago, that first, array or tier of players, you kind of go and get them. And even someone like Mbappe kind of starts to go, oh, hang on a minute. I'm going to earn like a fifth of what everyone else is earning just to kind of be in this better competition. That's just one domino in all of it. So when you go and get someone like Mbappe, and then you then are able to get all the other players for much cheaper because they'll go for double their earnings instead of 10 times their earnings, then all of a sudden you've got an incredibly strong league. And kind of, I know we're going all over the place here, but they're part of the same thing. That globalization that we were talking about, and the eyeballs that you're seeing. So Al Nassr, for example, they have more Twitter followers than any of the other teams outside of the top six, the big six, or whatever you want to call it. So the eyeballs will be there. So the next thing you need is a competition, and that competition is on its way as well.
No.
The Champions League will get watered down as well. I can't see how can't see how that doesn't happen.
Here's the thing. I imagine these teams will grow massively in branding and popularity, and so will the league. I'm not disagreeing with any of those things. It becoming the league kind of takes away all of the other factors, apart from having great players that made Italy the league when it was the league, and the Premier League the league as it is the league right now.
But why was Serie A the league, and why was the Premier League the league?
It was not but it's not just players. If the MLS had all the best players, it wouldn't be the league.
I think it would.
I don't think.
I think in 2023, when you can watch anything whenever you want, when most of the, and this isn't a dig at them, but it's a fact. When most of the biggest fan channels that love their club don't go to the game, despite being in the country. And again, this is not a dig. This is just the way the world is now. They stream the game. It doesn't matter where the game is.
This is the point. So this is we can talk. I guess I'll bring in another point here, which is who owns our football clubs in this country, and why I think it's always been important to keep a close eye on who those people are. Because the thing that will make the league in the future is the brand, is the history, is the club. So the thing that made Italy the league wasn't just having great players. It was having Inter Milan, AC Milan, Juventus. Do you know what I mean? Having big, huge clubs with history in football in the league.
I disagree.
The Premier League has huge clubs with history.
Chelsea didn't have history. history.
No, but Chelsea didn't make the league.
Man City didn't have the history.
Man City don't make the league. Because Paris Saint-Germain...
But they do, because they got the best players.
No, because Paris Saint-Germain got the best players. And they didn't make Liga the league. Because they're one team. You can't do it on your own. One team full of great players is not going to make the league the league. You need the league to become the league by having many teams with great players, number one. But also brands, teams, badges, clubs, history, family, whatever it is that goes into making us really care about the football team. I'm not saying that people won't watch the Saudi Pro League or that it won't be massively popular. And I'm not saying that it won't overtake. It might overtake the Premier League. I mean, but it doesn't mean that another league won't have also overtaken the Premier League, is my point. I mean, the Premier League might be the third or fourth one day.
No one's got more money than the Saudis, have they? I don't know if that's the case.
The thing that will stop them being the league long term, the reason why I disagree with you thinking that it will be the league for the long term, is that you're taking away the motivations for spending all of this money and the motivations for bringing these players in. And there is a time limit on that. Saudi Arabia have a vision of growing their country around 2030. They also want a World Cup. They want to build a new city called Neom by 2039. There is a time frame by which they want to grow the popularity of Saudi Arabia generally, grow the population, whatever it is, the goals of the state might be. They aren't getting into football because they want to have the greatest league for the next 200 years. They just want to grow out, and they want to get into golf for that reason. They want to get into whatever it is, tennis for that reason.
Why do you not? I think you're getting mixed up with a short-term aim.
That's a short-term aim.
Short-term aim. But once that's done, they want, like for the Mbappe transfer, you're saying yourself, they could have given a much lower bid, but they have the infinite amounts of money. Go, okay, it's just
No,
typing a different number.
But we are
in.
currently
So-
in the phase of we want eyes on the Saudi Pro League. We're currently in the phase of we want people to gravitate towards these football clubs. Like you're saying, we want them to buy our shirt. We want them to try and understand our culture more because we want people to come and work here. Well, they want to build a city that is like the
They want to
size
get
of
away from fossil fuels, don't they?
yeah, and they want to build a city that's the size of Belgium, right? So to do that, you want people to kind of go, Saudi Arabia, I know things about them, and sport is a huge way, and it's not just Saudi Arabia is not the first country to do this. Britain has done it, Germany has done it, Russia have done it. Over the years, sports washing is not a new. The United States have done it. It's not a new thing. So I'm not going to hammer Saudi Arabia for being the first state to try this because they're not. But they have a goal which is to do with an overarching view of growing their country. In many different areas, sport is a way of doing that.
Yeah, but and I get that. I agree with that.
But there is a time limit on it. They're not going to spend 300 million on players in 30 years' time.
But if
they might just spend the same as the Premier League does now. And again, you're right. It might be the biggest league, but I just don't think it will be.
But
because
if
I don't think you can make people care
but
about
I think
Saudi
you
Arabia.
can, because if you have unlimited wealth, that can go beyond 2039, and also have a look at what Chelsea and Man City have done. They have gone and they have spent a lot of money on transfers, right, to build, to compete. And then from there, you then build from the ground up and you start to build these incredible academies and you start to have these incredible players. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on in terms of Man City. And then when you have those players, it then can become a bit more of a sustainable thing with that additional money that you have because you have unlimited wealth. I think once you get to 2040 and it's still the hottest league, again, this isn't one where, we're scrabbling about, we're running out of money here, this needs to click. The money's there. So the money continues.
You missed the point. When Italy was the biggest league, people still went to games in England.
I'm not saying the league dies. I'm not saying the league dies.
People will still watch games in Italy and France and in Eastern Europe. They still get 35, or in Scotland, 70,000 fans. They aren't the biggest league. They don't go, do you know what? We're going to stop watching Celtic and Rangers and we're going to only watch the Premier League. Like it's there. They spend money on broadcasting or whatnot and they watch it, and they might even have a team that they support in that league.
Sure.
But the idea that we will abandon... It doesn't matter which territory you're in, River Plate or Boca Juniors. They're not the biggest league in the world.
I'm not saying abandon. I'm saying eyeballs. You can look at different things at the same time. I'm a QPR fan who talks about the Premier League more so than obviously my own club. I'm not saying that goes away, but I'm saying the eyeballs of the world will be on that league. I can see the eyeballs of that world because it's the same. It feels like the same as the Premier League, just on a much higher scale for me.
I think one of the things that changes football, one of the things that makes football great, and for me, this is the major test, and the thing that will open the gateway to what you're suggesting, is that somehow those teams become involved more in competitions that we watched, Champions League, basically. A European Super League comes, or I guess you can take the word European out of that, right? A Northern Hemisphere Super League team comes along, Super League comes along, and those teams are a part of it. And that may open the gateway because those players will be like, well, I'm in the same competition as Kevin De Bruyne at Manchester City, as Mason Mount at Manchester United, whoever it might be, right? That could be the only thing. And that's why I think we should move on to it. And it's probably the most important thing. Who owns our football clubs and who's running the sport?
What I've seen a little bit is this idea of scrapping FFP for Premier League and around Europe. How do you feel about that? Do you think that's something that needs to be done to almost allow those Premier League sides that have got the wealth, who could bring in the wealth, to try and combat those big prices that Saudi Arabia are going to be doing? Because in terms of regulating it, that's what I kind of wanted to get onto. The regulating of it, the idea of regulating it, and this is something I've been saying for 4 years and no one was bloody listening, it's the gaps that matter. If
you set a hard cap on the money to try and bring everyone together, the only thing that happens to football is rich owners take money out of football. If there is a rule that says we have a hard cap on salaries, but all the profit has to be reinvested in the club and the academy to produce better players in the future, and it's all about the future of the sport, even if it goes to charitable donations, I don't care. But we know what will happen because it happens in other sports, which is getting into owning an NFL team, for example, is one of the most coveted things possible because you cannot lose financially.
Yeah.
From being, you just need to be in it, and you've already won.
I'm not
financially,
saying, but I'm not
that's
saying
what will
it
happen
will
with
be
football
done or
ownership.
can be done. I'm saying that's how you do it in the fairest way I can think of.
So you're saying right now what we have is unfair.
I think there's an attempt there, but what you've seen is the fact that Europe is these borders are nonsense, because the eyeballs will go where the players go, and the players go where the money is.
But that's not a problem.
No, and again, I'm quite relaxed about that, because
yeah.
again, the Premier League is not actually my league. My league's the Championship,
Yeah.
and I don't want to be in that league. I'd rather be in, but I want there to be the opportunity. The core of sport is the ability to have somewhat of an even playing field, at the very least 11 against 11, and they're allowing that opportunity to go and achieve something. That's the power and the beauty of sport, and I want that to be retained.
But we already have that in the current system.
Sort of.
Yeah, but the thing is, the only threat to that is in within our system domestically. If you talk about England, the main threat to that is state ownership or oligarchs owning football clubs. People with a bottomless pit of money owning football clubs. The main threat to that was not Manchester United or Arsenal. Do you see what I mean? So people will be like, oh, well, or Liverpool. They weren't the main threat to that. Abu Dhabi or Qatar or Saudi Arabia, they're the main threat to that. So, but I wouldn't say, and again, we haven't really spoken too much about Saudi or Mbappe. Maybe we will.
Let's go to that now, because I think the players will be interesting. But go on, finish that final point.
No, but I think my point is there is a difference, even in my eyes, between a Saudi investor, someone who's incredibly rich, who comes from Saudi Arabia wanting to buy a football team, and a state-backed football team. And I think a lot of people kind of go, you're xenophobic or you're racist because you didn't have a problem when it was Russia. It's like, but we did have a problem when it was Russia. We do have a problem with Abu Dhabi. We do have a problem with Saudi Arabia because they're state-backed.
Yeah.
Not because a Russian person's involved or because someone from Abu Dhabi's involved, but because the state has bought football teams in our country and then distort the competition. That's I think for most people's, in my opinion anyway, maybe you do know loads of xenophobic people, but I don't. In my eyes, most people
Not going to name them.
in my eyes, that's the issue. And
but I talk to this with Flav a lot of the time. We kind of say football can be quite xenophobic in terms of that, protecting our league, protecting our club, and things like that. And so I'm kind of.
I think this is. I'll say it, and you can call me xenophobic if you want to. I've said this many times.
I probably will for a joke.
Yeah. I've said this many times, though. Football clubs in England have huge community value and huge significance, and they should be protected. If you don't know, we've got this thing here where we list buildings, and we say because they have an important historical value, even if you buy it and you own it, you can't change it, because it's been there for 500 years or whatnot.
Yeah.
So you can spend 2 million quid on a brilliant mansion in the countryside, but you can't build an extension. You can't change the windows because it's so important. And you're the only person that sees it. No one can even visit it. But yet we think it's so important that we've made a law that says you can't touch it. And I don't think football clubs, despite the fact that they have far wider reach in terms of community value, have been protected by the laws in our country. And people they sell the training ground or they sell the ground itself to themselves. And then when they can't afford to run the football club anymore, I own the football ground, so I'm going to charge the new owners rent and all these things that we've had in English football. And my view
That's
is...
Derby County, just to be clear.
Yeah. and many others, actually.
Sure.
I think government legislation should have protected our football clubs. Now, because of their huge, significant cultural value, I do think the idea that you would sell them to a foreign state is kind of wrong. I don't have a problem with the foreign for example, we're probably in a building right now owned by the Qatari state, or we're in London right now. London is massively invested in by Qatar, and Saudi Arabia, and our government does business with those, and we sell arms and all this stuff, and we can get into that if you want to. But our state has huge relationships with these states, so it's not me saying that we shouldn't. Although I disagree that in particular when it comes to arms and stuff like that, I don't agree that we should have those relationships. But ultimately, our state sees that we should, for some reason, have these relationships as part of our economy. So we do, and there's no, in my view, there's no problem in doing business with other states because that's how the world works.
Yeah.
But I don't think that many of these states would sell any institution of huge cultural and community significance, not to a British person or a British investor, but to the British state. I find that to be incredible.
Yeah.
That we thought, do you know what, Newcastle, 50,000 fans a week, one club city, fans going down there for generation after generation, watching Jackie Milburn, watching Alan Shearer. The Magpies have gone, do you know who should own this football club?
The country.
The Saudi Arabian state.
Yeah.
Or said that a guy who publicly admitted that he'd done a deal with Gorbachev to essentially steal fossil fuels from the Russian people and made himself a billionaire and an oligarch went, I'll buy Chelsea. And we all just went, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's not cool.
But it wasn't it wasn't hard no, was it? It was how much?
Yeah.
But that's where we keep coming back to.
For those of you that don't live in Britain, by the way, that's kind of how it works here. And that's my issue with the country right now. But because I love football, that's kind of one of my issues with football as well. Our country has been sold to foreign investors. So you and I want to go and buy a flat in any major city right now. There's a good chance that we can't even put in a bid to buy it because they're being sold off plan to investors in another country. But you can pay an exorbitant rent once it's been sold to someone in another country. And that's what we've done with the football teams.
Yeah.
We're basically saying foreign investors, brilliant, pour the money into the Premier League. Let's make the product as great as possible. Maybe we'll pay significant tax, and I guess that's why our country thinks it's a good idea. But and listen, that's not to say that, by the way, that these people, that these states are going to run the club any worse than an individual would, because we've seen rich individuals run football clubs incredibly badly.
Yeah.
But for me, we're talking about the competition moving away from what we think it should be domestically, and we're wondering what the future might be for Chelsea. And in my eyes, even Manchester United, I'm like, they can take the brand and they can move the club. They can say, by the way, Man United fans, do you know what? You've wanted a new stadium for so long. We've got you one. It's in Doha.
Yeah.
And
but what's amazing about that? There would be uproar, right? There would be absolute uproar.
But people would still watch.
Week. Yeah, for a week. Because again, the world has changed. And so you have 85,000 in a stadium. They're not the important ones anymore. It's the 300 million who watch around the world, or whatever. I'm picking a number out there, right?
Yeah. And
did you want to say something?
But that's the future of these competitions in my eyes. When we went to Qatar and we saw 8 beautiful stadiums in one city, I went, oh, wow. Imagine if any weekend you went to Doha, Man United were playing Arsenal in that stadium. Chelsea were playing, I don't know, Newcastle in another stadium.
Start to charter planes, don't they? And everyone's on it. Everyone's having
you're
a
like,
great time.
this is the best weekend ever.
Yeah.
If Saudi Arabia want that vision for their country, where they have a city the size of Belgium, imagine the possibilities.